Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Kesubos Daf test. We're going to start on the last three words on Ches on the base. Amar Rebbe Elazar. Rebbe Elazar taught. Now we're on the top of Tes Amid Aleph. Rebbe Elazar taught Omer Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. If a person, a husband, a groom, right after the wedding night, he makes the claim Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. He says that I have found her Pesach to be open. What's the Pesach? Pesach is a reference what we call, say, the hymen today. He claims that she's not a virgin because that was supposed to be intact, and he found it to be severed. Rashi says, "Vitanas damim einlo." He does not have a claim of blood, meaning to say he can't claim, well, there was no blood and there should have been blood. He can't make that claim. Why? She was from a family that was called the Dorkati family, which we're going to learn about on Daf Yud, which his family was known for not having their dam basulim, the blood of the virginity. So he wouldn't be able to make that claim here. Or alternatively, the reason why he can't make the claim that there was no blood is because maybe the sheets that they were using have disappeared. So he can't use it as a claim. But it is clear to him, says Rashi, that he says, I found her Pesach to be Pasuach. And so therefore, for this reason, I claim she's not a virgin. So there, under these circumstances, the Gemara explains, he is believed to say she is prohibited to him, even though this matter is not able to be clarified, meaning to say, even though he can't prove it, the only basis of evidence is his assertion. Nevertheless, Rashi says, vis-a-vis himself, he would be believed to say that she's prohibited to him, that she was adulterous. So since if a woman is adulterous, Rahman al-Islam, she's prohibited to forever to be with the person with whom she committed adultery, and also to return to her husband. And so therefore, under these circumstances, since he says she was not a virgin, and I expected her to be one, therefore we assume that she was adulterous. And so therefore, but we only believe it vis-a-vis his claim, but not vis-a-vis her. So what that means is, she says, he's believed that he's not allowed to be with her, but he's not allowed to say, I'm not going to pay your ksuba. According to Rebbe Elazar, and that everybody will see in the later on in the Gemara, that Rabbi Yehuda argues with this in the name of Shmuel. Rebbe Elazar says that she loses her ksuba. And I asked the question, why? Why is she prohibited to be with him? Why is he not allowed to be with her anymore? Why don't we say, why don't we say his claim is filled with a double doubt? What's a double doubt? So let's say even we believe him that her Pesach was Pasuach, but still, Safek Tachtov, Safek In Tachtov. She might have been adulterous. She might have lost her virginity before she was engaged to him. It might have been prior to that. And even if you say she lost her virginity while she was engaged to him, Safek Ba'one, Safek Barazo, and it could have been that she lost it against her will. So why do we say that he's prohibited to her? Why don't we say differently? Why don't we say that it's a double doubt how it happened that she became prohibited, how it happened that she lost her virginity, and so therefore it's possible that that it wasn't adulterous, and he's allowed to remain with her. Gemara says, no, what we're talking about here is, tzricha be'eshes kohen. The Gemara says, first possibility, we're talking about a man who's a Kohen, who's married to this woman. So therefore, we reduce the double doubt, because a Kohen's wife, Rahman al-Islam, if she's assaulted, she's not allowed to return to her husband. So therefore, it's only one doubt. The doubt is if the adultery happened while she was betrothed to him, or before she was betrothed to him. And so since it's only one doubt, and the way some commentaries explain it, and so therefore, since it's a biblical law, we'd be strict, and he's not allowed to be with her anymore. Alternatively, Be'eshes Yisrael. No, even if he's a regular Jew, he's not a Kohen, but still, why is she going to be prohibited to him now? Could go into Kibo Ba'avu al Kiddushin. So, where her father is talking about a scenario where she was married off under the age of 3, And so therefore, the Gemara says in Nida that by the age of 3 is where we assume any person, that's where your virginity is really established. If it lost your virginity before the age of 3, it grows back, says the Gemara. So therefore, under these circumstances, since she was married off before the age of 3, there's only one way she could have lost her virginity while she was married to him. And so therefore, there's only one doubt. Did she do it? Was she assaulted or not? And so therefore, that's why, since it's only one doubt, we're strict in that case. And that's why she remains prohibited to him. The Gemara says, well, if that's all Rebbe Elazar is teaching us, that if he makes this claim, she's going to be prohibited to her, that a person is believed to say something which we look at it from the perspective of law and say it didn't happen, but with respect to him, his own assertion, we're going to say it's prohibited. Well, if that's the case, Tanina, we already learned this in a Mishnah. What's Rebbe Elazar even teaching us? We already have a Mishnah that teaches us this. What's the case? The case is Omer Isha Kidashtich. A man says to a woman, guess what? We got married. He claims, I married you. I had 2 witnesses, and they are now in Japan. I can't get them here to court. But she says, no, we were never married. She claims we were never married. He says we were married. So therefore, the Mishnah said, Mishnah in Kedushin Samachai, the Mishnah says, we believe him only vis-a-vis himself. Says the Mishnah, he muteres bekrovav, who also bekrovosah. She's allowed to be permitted to his relatives, but he's prohibited to be to her relatives. He muteres bekrovav, who also bekrovosah. Mean to say, she's still allowed to marry his father, his son, his brother, because we're going to say that from her perspective, there's no evidence that she was ever married, just his assertion. Whereas he says we were married, so he's no longer allowed to marry her daughter, her mother, etc., because we believe him vis-a-vis himself being prohibited. So therefore, if that's the case, why does Rebbe Elazar have to say this law? It's basically the same thing as this Mishnah. Whereas no, there's a distinction between the Mishnah and this case, and our case over here, where he says Pesach Pasuch Motzasi, where he says I found you to be a non-virgin. What's the difference? Ma'u Tema, you might have said Hasam Devadai Kimwe. There in the case where he says I betrothed you, he's 100% certain. He's so certain. He says I had 2 witnesses and I betrothed you. Well, then we're going to believe him vis-a-vis her. You might have said in this case of the Pesach Pasuach, you might have said make him Hudo Kimwe. You might have said in this case, we're not going to believe him. We're going to say, well, maybe since you're a single guy, you're unmarried, you're not expert in whether or not she's a virgin, and so therefore, maybe we'll say there it's going to be Pesach Pasuach. Maybe we're going to say there that maybe he made a mistake, and so therefore he's going to think he found a Pesach Pasuach, but it's not the case, and therefore we're not going to prohibit her. So we say we don't say that. If he says he's sure, we believe him, but only vis-a-vis himself. So Gemara says, does Rebbe Elazar really say that this concept that if a woman, the Gemara is asking a general question now according to Rashi, does Rebbe Elazar really say that if a woman is adulterous, she's going to be prohibited to her husband on the basis of his assertion? Because that's what's going on here, that the husband is asserting you're adulterous. Is that enough for her to be prohibited to her husband? Does Rebbe Elazar really say that? But Rebbe Elazar seems to say something else. Rebbe Elazar says elsewhere, Eina Isha. Rebbe Elazar says elsewhere, Eina Isha Neseres al-Bala. When under what circumstances does a woman become prohibited to her husband? Remember, we're saying here, Rebbe Elazar says a man is not allowed to be with his wife, even if he's the only one who asserts the adultery. But we have another statement where Rebbe Elazar says a woman is prohibited to her husband only if only if there is what's called Kina. That means the husband warns her, you're not allowed to be with that man. Stira, then she became specifically secluded with that man. Like the incident of David and Bathsheba. And this is not what's going on here. Here is a husband's just asserting that she was adulterous. Why would she be prohibited if that's what Rebbe Elazar says elsewhere? That you need Kina, Stira, Maisa Shaya. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. B'tizbra, this statement of Rebbe Elazar is Kina, Stira, Maisa Shaya. It's not it's not at first glance, it's not so simple. First of all, do you think that statement needs to be taken like the way it's said? Ma'aser Shahaya Bekina V'stira Hava? That case of Ma'aser Shahaya refers to David and Bathsheba. There was no warning there. Uriah didn't warn Bathsheba not to be secluded with David. And second of all, Va'on Mias Ruah. And second of all, Bathsheba was not prohibited to David. She ended up marrying David after the fact, and she wasn't prohibited to Uriah. So it's a completely different case. So the Muslim will know. Halo kasha, that's not difficult. Hachikamer, this is what Rebbe Lezer is saying. Eina isha neseres al bala, a woman would only become prohibited to her husband. Ella al iske kino v'stira mimaisa shahaya. So the law of kino v'stira v'lo itzera. He says, no, it's just the opposite. He says, a woman's only going to become prohibited to her husband if there was kinoi v'stira, and if there was warning and seclusion. And the way we learn that is from Ma'aseh Shahaya, is from David and Bathsheba, because since Uriah did not warn Bathsheba not to be secluded with David, therefore, for this reason, she didn't become prohibited to her husband. The Gemara says, well, that's very difficult also. It's a difficult reading. Mikol makom kasha, kinoi v'stira in Pesach Pasuach lo. Gemara first says, well, first of all, we have a difficulty here. Rebbe Lezer seems to be saying in that other statement that kino v'stira in that if there's warning and seclusion, she's excluded, but not if there is Pesach Pasuach. But if he just says Pesach Pasuach, she's not prohibited to be with her husband, like the husband just asserts it. And so we have a contradiction between Rebbe Lezer. So the Gemara says, obviously, your logic is going to be a problem because according to your reasoning, do you think that really the only way a woman's prohibited to her husband is if there's warning and then seclusion? You mean say if there's warning and seclusion, is she prohibited to her husband? But if there are two witnesses who say, I saw her committing adultery, Rahman al-San, she's not prohibited to be with her husband? Must be that this is what the statement of Rebbe Lezer is saying. A woman does not become prohibited to her husband with one witness. She only becomes prohibited to return to her husband if there were two witnesses. But if there's one witness, she's not prohibited to return to her husband. But if she had warning and seclusion, if she was warned in front of two witnesses and then she was secluded in front of two witnesses, then I feel be'ed echad nami. Then even if there's just one witness to the adultery, she's going to be prohibited to return to her husband. And Rebbe Lezer continues, and if the husband claims, oh, your Pesach was Pasuach, it's the equivalent of two witnesses, and so therefore, under those circumstances, she is prohibited upon him. So that's how so it's really not a contradiction of Rebbe Lezer's statement. And then the Gemara finishes, if Ma'aseh Shahaya, and the Rebbe Lezer says, and if you want to say, well, that incident in that Bathsheba, where there why was Bathsheba, after she had relations with David, why was she not prohibited to return to her husband Uriah? Hasam onesu. So the first answer to the Gemara is in that case, she was assaulted by David. That she was assaulted by David. And so therefore, since she was under duress, so therefore, she was not a willing participant. So she's allowed to return to her husband. And since she's allowed to return to her husband, she's also allowed to return to David. Ironically, if he assaults her, he has more of a chance to remain with her, the assaulter, which is, it seems very, very ironic. Alternatively, call the alternative answer of why Bathsheba was not prohibited to return to Uriah or to David. What's the reasoning? Get Krisos Kosev. And whoever went out to battle from David's army would write a get for his wife. Before we get into the continuation, this Gemara will explain the two major theories about what this is. That Rashi says that the husband would write a conditional get. He's saying, if I don't return by a certain date, then you're divorced from me, starting from today. Tosfos doesn't like that. Tosfos doesn't like that answer. Rabbeinu Tam doesn't like it because it's very complicated. So Ratam's answer, and this actually fits in with the pashtus of the Gemara, says that they would write a get krisus. They would actually write a divorce in private and give it to her, so she'd be divorced, and then when they come back, she would remarry. That's how Tosfos understands it. As it states, it states in the verse when Yishai sent David to see his brothers, he says, go visit your brothers in peace, and take their aruba. What's their aruba? Take the, Rashi says, take the kedushin, meaning to say, take their get a get from them for their wives, so that before they go out into battle, their wives will not be left in aguna. And David learned from his father that this is what he should also do with his soldiers. And so therefore, when David was with Bathsheba, she was not married. Well, according to Tosfos, it's very clear she was not married. According to Rashi, she's still conditionally married. And so Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam asked the question on Rashi, well, how do you know she's going to get divorced? Why was he able to be with her? So that's why Rashi's explanation is very difficult. So Amar Abaye Afanan Nami Tanina. Abaye says Afanan Nami Tanina. What does that mean? Abaye says this also we learned in the Mishnah. What also do we learn in the Mishnah? This idea, Rashi says that if a person makes the claim, if the husband makes the claim, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, that I found her to be a virgin, Asra Olav, she is going to become prohibited to him. And we don't say he was not aware of it. So Abaye says this idea of Rebbe Lazar that if we say Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, we believe him vis-a-vis her being prohibited to him. This was also learned in the Mishnah. Which Mishnah? Our opening Mishnah in the Masechta. It says in the Masechta, Pesua Nisei Slayom Arvi, that a Pesua, that a virgin girl can get married should get married on a Wednesday, which implies Yom Ravi and Yom Chamishi Lo. She gets married on a Wednesday, but not on a Thursday. What's the reason why she has to get married on a Wednesday and not on a Thursday? Because we're concerned that if she got married on a Thursday, remember we said in the opening daf that the Bezdin used to meet in those days only on Monday and Thursday. So therefore, if she got married on a Thursday, and if he married the Besua on a Thursday, then he wouldn't be able to go to a court if he had a claim until the next week. And then in those circumstances, he might calm down too much and then not go to the court. So we want him to get married on Wednesday, where if he discovers something on Wednesday night, he can immediately go to the court the next day before he calms down. The Gemara says, and now let's analyze this as Abaye. What are we worried about? Why do we not want him to calm down? If we're going to say, well, if he calms down, he's going to give her the ksuba, what do we care? Let him give her the ksuba. That's his business. If he wants to give as much money as he wants to her, that's his right. But rather what we're saying is we want her to be prohibited to him, because if she was really adulterous, we want him to go to the court before he comes down, so all the witnesses will come out, and we'll see that she's prohibited to him. So that's what we're talking about. So the whole situation in the Mishnah is to say that she's prohibited to him. And what's his claim? Udkatayin Taina, and he has a claim here. What's his claim? That she's going to be prohibited to him. My love, the Katayin Tanas Pesach Pasuach. Must be that he's making this claim that I discovered that her hymen was ruptured, that she's not a virgin, and we see under these circumstances, we see explicitly that he's believed for her to be prohibited to him. So therefore, what's Rebbe Lazar saying? We have a Mishnah that says this exact same thing. So the Gemara says, no, that's not his claim. In this claim, it's different. No, he's making a claim that there was no blood. He's saying there was no blood, and here's the sheet, and she's not from Mishpachas Dorkati, and so there's a sheet of blood. There's a sheet with no blood, and she's not from Mishpachas Dorkati, and so therefore, that's the claim. It's not the claim of Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. That's how we're going to believe him, because he's got the evidence. Rashi says the Taina Mevurerasi. It's a very clear claim. You can't say, well, he's not an expert. You could say he's not an expert about Pesach Pasuach, about finding a hymen ruptured, but about whether or not there's blood, he's not everybody could be an expert on that. So therefore, everybody can say he doesn't know how to do the claim of Pesach Pasuach, but the claim of no blood, that's very obvious. He says there was no blood. Here's the sheet. There is no blood. And so that's why we want him to go to court the next day for her to be prohibited upon him. So all of this was Rebbe Lazar. Again, Rebbe Lazar's shita is if the man says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, we believe him vis-a-vis her that she's going to be prohibited to him, but he still has to pay her the ksuba. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. That a man who makes this claim, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. He's going to be believed not only to say that she's prohibited, this is what most commentaries say, but also he doesn't have to pay her ksuba. He comes along with this claim, which is not able to be verified, and says, and she doesn't have to, and as a result of that claim, he doesn't have to pay his ksuba. Rashi says that the Gemara is going to tell us later on, i.e. on Daf Yud, Gemara is going to explain Chazaka, that there's a concept, Ein Adam Toreach Pesauda Mafsida. What's the reason why I believe him? Because he just made a big wedding meal. A person's not going to make a huge wedding and then want to look like a jerk or like he's in a big scandal the next morning and go to court and say there's a huge scandal going on. If he was really making this up, he wouldn't want to do it. It doesn't make sense to do that. So therefore, that's the presumptive status here. Chazaka Ein Adam Toreach Pesauda Mafsida. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, he's believed to take away her ksuba. He doesn't have to pay her. He divorces her, and he doesn't have to give her a cent. So Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, this was also Tanina. This is what's Rabbi Yehuda saying in the name of Shmuel. This is also a Mishnah. Where is this Mishnah? We're going to get to this on Daf Yud Beis. Somebody who goes. The man is betrothed to his bride, and when they're betrothed, she's not allowed to be with anybody else, but she's also not allowed to be with her husband. Except in Yehuda, they had a practice that they used to seclude them with each other. They used to spend a few moments alone so that they would get used to each other. So, let's say there were no witnesses, but we know he was secluded because he went to have a meal with his father-in-law in Judah. So then, he's no longer able to make a claim. Oh, she lost her virginity. She must have been adulterous because he was secluded with her. So it's very possible, and she could just turn around and say, "Yeah, I'm not a virgin because of you." So he's not able to make that claim. But we say, when she's in Judah, he can't make the claim because he was secluded with her. Matzitain. But if he would be in other parts of Israel, in the Galilee, for example, he can make the claim that she's not a virgin, even though, because he was never secluded with her, and he can make the claim that she lost her virginity from somebody else. And what is the claim? What's he trying to make? What claim? Well, if he wants to say you're prohibited to me, well, if he wants to say he's not allowed to be with her, well, if he really knows for sure that he was not with her, then in Judah, why is he allowed to remain with her? He knows for sure it wasn't him. So he could say, it wasn't me. He could assert that. So he should be able to make that claim in Judah. Why does the Mishnah say he can't make it? So it must be that the purpose of this claim is la'afsida ksuvasa. He wants to take away her ksuva on the basis of his claim. He wants to say, I don't owe you anything because I wasn't secluded with you and I found your Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. And I found you to be a non-virgin. And we see from here, is he must be making the claim, I found your Pesach to be Pasuach, and therefore, and our Mishnah says he does, not only is he not allowed to be with her, but he doesn't have to pay her ksuba. So we see from here that we already have a statement, a Mishnah, from exactly saying what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. So Rabbi Yosef is saying, why does Rabbi Yehuda need to say it? It's a Mishnah. The Gemara says, no, the Katan Tanis Tamim. No, in this case, he's not making the less clear claim that the Pesach was Pasuach, because maybe he really doesn't know what he's talking about there, so he wouldn't take away her ksuba. But he makes a different claim. There was no blood. He says there's no blood on the wedding night, and we can say that she was from a Dorkati family. And we can say that we can't. So and he has the sheet, and the sheet has no blood on it. So therefore, under those circumstances, it's strong enough evidence, according to our Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, to say we take away our ksuba. We're going to stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address them.